Welcome to the Startup Grind.
If you have a female leader in your life, you know, that is more valuable than literally anything, especially to me. And the one person that I look up to the most is my sister.
Hey.
Right?
Nice.
So I decided to not host this event this month, and I wanted my sister to step in. And I wanted to do it in this space, specifically so that we could tie 3 different interesting dynamics of 43 North together. So, sitting in front of you are a current 43 North staff member, a current 43 North board member, and the current 43 North $1 million winner from the previous year. So when I think about female leaders in Buffalo, I think we put together the bomb squad, right? The dream team. So I'm going to keep this short because the weather is beautiful and we want to get outside and really enjoy everything that Homestead has to offer.
It's a true honor. I moved back home it'll be 4 years Labor Day, and was blessed to get this role at 43 North, hired by John, wherever he went. And then maybe a year later, John was hired by the DNC. So it's a true gift. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to work literally next door to my brother. So here we go. I'm going to start with a little plug. Does anyone hear the big news that 43 North announced today for small businesses in Buffalo? Okay, so we have it's in the news now. We partnered with Facebook, announced today, so we have another $1 million of money coming to Western New York for small businesses. So I will be here later to talk specifically about that. The application is through mid-June, but anything technical or logistical that I can support or encourage you to apply, I'll be here. So that's what we've been working on today. But without further ado, my guests here, both women here, they're 2 of the most brilliant women in Western New York, and what I've decided to kind of do here is humanize them. Because I think they're 2 women that you might see walking on the medical campus or down the long hallway to the bathroom here, but they're working so hard that it's rare that we really get to kind of strip back their brilliance and see who they are. So that's my intent tonight, and then if you have questions that I don't address, we'll have time for Q&A, maybe in a half hour or 40 minutes. Okay? So let's start with brief introductions. I would prefer to hear from them versus reading like the normal bio and all that. So Norma, tell us who you are.
Okay, so I'm a native Buffalonian, born and bred here. Went to Buffalo Public Schools, went to Mount St. Joe's, then across the street to Peaches College, then through the PV. So I was very lucky in that I happened to be in the right place at the right time for a number of things. I was working and training at Crossroad Park in human genetics. The human genome program was getting underway, and we were lucky to get one of the first grants in that program, and then ended up being a major part of that entire project. So I was asked to join the 43 North Board, and I've never been right at the very beginning. It was a very exciting time in Buffalo. Governor Cuomo had announced $1 billion for Buffalo, and part of it was that pillar of entrepreneurship. And I have to say, it was, even having founded my own company 10 years ago, there was very little here for someone to actually, you were like wandering in the wilderness trying to find, okay, who can help me with business development? How do I find a CEO? Because as a scientist, I knew that CEO is not my role. And there were people here, like Marnie Levine, who really helped connect me and found funding. But I would say the world that we have here today has so much more in it, and 43 North is part of that ecosystem that's been built. So you can't find, management teams that are so critical to young businesses, and you can find funding. I think we see more of that. And I think the other thing that's so important is growing the mentors in Buffalo. The more we do, the more people will get attracted here. And I think to be around for a long time and make a lot more happen. And I think all of you should be part of that. And I'm thrilled that last year, yes, go girl power.
Thank you.
So I'm going to let Bethany tell us about what she's been up to and talk some more.
Cool, thank you. My name is Bethany. I'm the founder and CEO of SomaDetect, the winning company from last year. So we do milk quality testing I came from a lot of places. I grew up originally in Guelph, Ontario, which is not so far. I did my graduate studies in Quebec City, Canada, and then was living most recently in Fredericton, Brunswick. And then moved to Buffalo.
Great. So I will say, well, first you should note, ACB Auctions went on a pedal tour this afternoon, so they're clearly had a great afternoon. That's what we're hearing from ACB. Good for them. Secondly, I will say, so I handle all of the kind of coordination once we announce the finalists and they're coming to Buffalo for 43 North Week for an opportunity to pitch for our prize money. Working with Bethany in that whole process, she was the most responsive and the most organized, most prompt. Every event we did that week, they were almost too early, like they were already down in the lobby waiting for the leader. So it was meant for her to win based on just timeliness alone. So we work very well together. And Norma is usually one of the first to our board meetings. And up until May comes in her fur coat because she's
Finally, it's warmer.
she finally put her coat away last week, big fur coat. But she's always freezing. Bill and all the guys at Peak Rum are always hot. So we have this constant debate in our conference room over here during personal board meetings.
Turn off the air conditioning, please.
Yes.
So Bethany, one of the best experiences I had, I went to school with a young man who had his family of dairy farmers.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were in college at Canisius, he's not a big pathologist known for, but he allowed me to milk that cow by hand.
Yes.
And I remember saying to him, I've never touched anything this soft before. The whole process was amazing, and they birthed the cow. It was unbelievable.
That's fantastic.
Yeah! There we go.
So, girls, I think it would be interesting to hear. So, if we go back, we've talked about where you came from, but think about, back middle school-ish. Like, what were your career aspirations then? So, I'll say for me, and Sean might kill me, but I always wanted to be a teacher, right? Like, my parents gave me a classroom in our building. I had all these old school books, and Sean was my only student for years. So, forever I wanted to be a teacher. What did you do? He would do homework and tests and get in trouble. What about you?
So I'd have to say I always had a love for science. So I had a grandmother who was the child of Polish immigrant parents who started a farm. That was my other experience. Chickens and cows killed my parents. But it was interesting in that she never had a chance to go to college, and they were not wealthy. She married a man from Buffalo, so she had to clean houses. But the one thing she ingrained in me is how important education is. And she lost her life to cancer when I was only about 6 years old. But I remember sitting with her, and she'd go to the library, she would walk through these books on, what causes human disease. And I was a little kid, but what she did in those days was so burnt into me that I carried that forward. And then I had other women in my life, like Sister Dina and Sella from Mount St. Joe's, so nuns, women before their time, educators who, she went out to Berkeley and studied in the 60s astrophysics. And then, unbelievable. Came back here, and she was the principal of Mount St. Joseph's Academy. And Bee still, is a part of my life. She's 80-some years old. And, I just said to her, you were just such a huge inspiration to me. And, you continue that. They light that fire early, and just keep building the fire, building the fire. But there are a number of women who I think were very instrumental in helping me get to this point.
Does that work? This one? Oh, yes, it does. Yeah, this is a tough question. I don't know what I wanted to be growing up. I think I spent so many years really lost. Even at that age, I certainly had things that I wouldn't answer when people asked me. So I remember when I was about 7 or 8, I started telling people I wanted to be a psychiatrist, having no idea what that meant. But that seemed to be an okay answer. But I didn't really have. I knew I wanted to do a lot of things. I knew I wanted to be able to just do art and do science and do and write and all of this stuff. But I don't think I really had something specific that I was sort of aiming towards. I was a little bit lost as a kid.
So when you did those career surveys and kind of explorations, you were sort of all over the map. I'm assuming.
So I don't remember ever doing those at school either. We probably did. I was a little bit of a dreamy kid. I was I was okay at school. I was like good at school, but I mostly was reading. I used to read all the time under my desk. I was really good at that. I guess I
Can you see that?
I wanted to be a programmer or like a computer scientist for a long time as well, but that, I sort of became, there's so many jobs that I became disillusioned with very quickly as well, and so, yeah, it's hard to say.
Cool. So imagine the weather today, but on a Saturday, and you have no plans. Where might we find you? What might you be doing or drinking or eating?
Should I go first? My answer is lame, but that's fine. I would be probably at home on my couch with my husband and my cats, watching The Office, or just sort of hanging out and taking it easy.
Not here.
I'm here a lot of Saturdays and Sundays these days, which I kind of like. It's like being in school after hours. So no, but I'm trying to think outside the work box. Yeah, outside the work box, I don't think I would be at 43.
So we have a family home on the Canadian shore, and they're say, well, I always tell people, oh, I'm in another country, it's this beautiful place in the world. And they think I've gone someplace really cool, and like, now it's kind of, Crystal Beach. But it is the most beautiful place in the world where you can just sit out there on the beach with a book, nobody bothers you.
Yeah. There's something about crossing the bridge and losing cell service that
It's wonderful.
I have found recently really allows me to turn off, which I have an incredibly difficult time doing, so that's great. And you get up there a bit in the summer?
I do. The best time is early in the morning. Get up and take a walk on the beach. And just, there's no one there. Just human nature.
It's wonderful.
I'm glad you're such fans of Canada.
Yes, yes, we love Canada. So, on that note, is Bethany, particularly for you, in your almost 6 months now in Buffalo, talk about if you've identified a favorite restaurant or meal or cuisine that strikes your fancy.
Well, so it's my first time living in the United States, and I love like Southern American food. So we're actually going out to barbecue later tonight, which I'm very excited about. But I have to say that I tend to be someone who like finds a favorite and sticks to it. I love during 43 North Week, we had that event where we had the burgers from the
Oh, with Lunch McCormick.
Yes, and there was like the peanut butter burger, the Jiffy burger they
Do
call
you know that one with the peanut butter with the jalapeno?
I love that burger.
I agree.
And maybe they also does these like tater tots. They do like a tater tots poutine thing, which anyway, it's amazing.
ABB, that's what I'm Bethany.
Okay, this is good. So I love lamb chops, and I don't make them, but I go to Hutch's and order them there, and I don't feel any guilt.
That's pretty cool. You should know feel about going to Hutch's.
Favorite restaurant for years, but it's
Yeah.
one of those things where I try not to eat a lot of meat, but I can't resist.
Okay, so when you need something from Norma, just keep an eye on the Hutchins entrance. When the lamb chops are on the menu.
So don't get near my lamb chops.
Let her eat them and then ask her whatever you need. Great, so let's talk, Norma, you kind of touched on what that inspired you. So then, but are there anyone else maybe that are relatable to other people that we know or maybe not that kind of inspired you when times were tough or when you were at a fork in the road and you had to decide kind of which route to go?
So there are a couple of women that, some of you may remember, some of you not. There was a provost at the university back in the early 2000s, and she still remains to be the highest ranking woman who held that position. Her name was Bethany Deshpande. She visited Buffalo a couple of years ago, and she was the one who really fought for the creation of bringing UB downtown and helping get this medical campus together. She was able to get the business leaders, Roswell Park, and the university to work together, not to compete against one another, but to work together to change the dynamics of the city. So when she came back a couple of years ago, she was overwhelmed with the sea of change that has happened here, and how all of her hopes and aspirations for Buffalo have really come proved to be proven true. And sadly, she died last year. And she died of glioblastoma, which is a brain tumor. And it's a huge loss to the world. But I remember her saying to me, she was just a wonderful mentor. Don't take this wrong, guys, but that men suck the air out of the room. Make your voice be heard. Do not let them talk over you. And it really coached me along the way to make sure that, I was a much younger woman at the time. So when she left Buffalo, we stayed in touch. And as I said, when she came back, she was just overwhelmed. And then Candace Johnson at Roswell Park was someone else who's been a wonderful mentor. I'm so proud to see her as the CEO, only CEO of a comprehensive cancer center. And we remain friends and, want to continue to work together. But she, at a point in my career where there was a man at Roswell Park who, I was going head to head with. And she basically stood up for me and helped me fight a battle with him. And we won. So
I'll never forget it.
I will never forget it.
This is a tough one to answer for me. One of the things, so I find myself, since I started this company, sort of newly in this space of being viewed as like a woman entrepreneur, being seen as that. Identifying that absolutely, but I wasn't someone that would necessarily stand up and for women's rights. Actually, I felt so much more passionate about other typily disenfranchised groups. I did a lot of work on sort of different human rights things and work in poverty and stuff in my undergrad. But it was really, for me, it started a lot the night of 43 North. That evening, after we won and at the after party, I had so many women come forward that said they had seen power in my pitch, that they had felt inspired by by what happened that night, and it actually was a bit of a shock to me. I didn't always know at that moment how to respond and how to be that person for them. I didn't feel like that person, right? And but since then, I have realized so much, and I think it just gives me such strength. The number of women that are fighting for fighting for us, fighting for equality, fighting to have our voices heard. I think that's absolutely something. And I think also, it's wonderful to be able to be that person for someone else. That's really wonderful. So I think for me, it's a lot of those people doing that battle. So many women that I see doing this, across the world. It's really, really lovely.
Great, and I think it would be worthwhile to just remind the audience of what SomaDetect does.
We're a dairy technology company. So we have a sensor system that measures compounds in milk in real time as they flow through. So we measure everything from globules of fat, really large, complex, big things, all the way down to individual molecules. And we do that without any reagents or consumables, so it can be completely in line in the dairy system. So I end up in dairy, which is predominantly men. I was actually at the Dairy Farmers of America in their head office in March, and their chief of staff puts up this photo of their board. And it's like 60 guys all in the same suit, and they have one woman standing at the front, and she goes, this is our board. We're a really diverse group, and they're all these like great, it's just like, but part of it was I loved hearing from someone that chief of staff just blew my mind. She was absolutely an inspiration to me, a woman in business, a total, clearly very powerful with her words. She held nothing back. She didn't hesitate at all to call that out, and I'm sure does that on a daily basis. Tech is, you talk to VCs and they're all men, and you talk to dairy, there are actually some women dairy farms, but there are a lot of men in dairy. And even I end up explaining to a lot of VCs the basics of reproduction, because the dairy industry is fundamental. There's so much of womanhood in it. There's so much of, you know, being pregnant, having a baby, producing milk, which women, we all know you have to have a baby in order to produce milk and all of these things, but I end up having to explain very, very basic reproduction to a lot of men because they're just disconnected from that, from like the entire body system. And so it's a bit of a funny place to be in. I'm definitely the youngest and, you know, one of the few women in this industry, so yeah.
Woo! But one of the things you find, so I turned 60 years old this year, and I kept thinking about, oh my God, how could I want to be this old? It can't be this old. Then you look at your children and you say, it must be true. I have to be this old. Look at them. One's married, one's getting married. But you begin to think about, well, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? And I'm on a board here in Buffalo that I find to be one of the most rewarding, which is the Buffalo Center for Arts and Technology, as well as working at UB at the Center of Excellence. And one of the things we do is workforce development. So we do programs with Buffalo Public Schools, because I really feel that, and you know this county, that we'll never truly turn this city around until we give the children in this city the same opportunities that I had growing up here. So we try and do as many activities as we can, bringing those children into the university, but also going into the schools with them. We've even established a high school for the children. So it's a lot of balance, and I'd have to say, would you call that work important? Yes, to a certain degree. But when I go home at night, I think about the kids, and even, you know, I've said to the provost at UB, even if it's one child at a time, I will do that every day. I've got all these scientific awards, I've done all this stuff, but it's those children whose lives have been changed through what BCAT does, and through what we do with Buffalo Public Schools. And you know, people say, you're never going to solve that problem. That's a huge social problem. Well, I'm not going to stop trying. You know, that's what they said to me about my husband's illness. You would never understand why that happened. But it's not going to stop me from still trying every single day. And that's why things you've done with kids in the city are so important to me. And I think even though, you know, as you say, well, it's not truly, you know, part of the mission. It is part of the mission. It absolutely is. And you know, for women, honestly, the girls, the interns last year, they were so impressive. Every little girl should grow up knowing that not only can she get a great education, but she can own her own company. She can be, you know, she can, as my sons used to say, they don't want to work for the man, they want to be the man. Like, you know, you might be working for the woman, kid out. Just remember that. So, yeah.
I would agree. We created a program here called Students to Startups, and it just kind of evolved because more and more teachers are reaching out to us here and asking if they can come for a tour. And as you can see, kind of this is the tour, you know, so it's kind of hard to explain. We're not a museum, where you just kind of come and look around and see that there's no walls and we have snacks and, you know, we wear jeans to work today. I'm dressed up because of that press conference. But then we started sitting down, so we'd have very small groups of students come just to fill our conference, no more than 20, and they'd sit down with an entrepreneur. And I would do this type of Q&A, and I'd always open with, is anyone in here an entrepreneur? And the kids would all be, you know, never raising a hand. And then when we talk through what it means to be an entrepreneur, or like we identify family members that own garages, or someone has an Etsy store, or someone's a babysitter, and like they realize like how fundamentally interested they are in becoming entrepreneurs. So you see these little light bulbs go off, and I swear every morning I look at my calendar, and my favorite part of my day is when I see, particularly at Buffalo Public School, coming in to visit, because it's just the most rewarding work, besides helping our winners, that we can do, right? Because you don't know what kid in that conference room is going to have the light switch go off and change the world that we live in. So I agree very much.
And I think what you're doing is you're making them believe that their dreams can come true too. And every child deserves.
Right, and especially now in Buffalo, because when I graduated high school in 2002, UB was, I didn't even consider a UB wasn't even a safety school. My safety school was in Rhode Island. And that wasn't anything against UB, it was just, we wanted to get out of Buffalo. Like our entire class of 84, I'd say 95% of us were left and had no interest in staying. So now we're seeing more and more retain, and we open these kids' eyes to this cool stuff going on, the opportunity to get good jobs. And so it's student by student, we're trying to make an impact. So girls, let's talk about maybe more of a difficult question in that think across your career, some barriers that you've encountered that maybe the one with Roswell or VC stuff. I'd actually be interested on your comment earlier, just in your time as an entrepreneur, because we slowly hear more and more that there's more women in tech, venture funding are starting to spread beyond the coast and also into women and minorities. Are you experiencing that, Bethany?
Yeah, I see a lot of different angles here and a lot of, there's absolutely a movement, which is really exciting. It's, it's an exciting time to be a woman in the space, to be starting a company and building a company. I think that a lot of road has been paved by those before us, right? It's a lot more open, and I think there's sort of more opportunity in that way. There's more and more funds that are specifically geared to women entrepreneurs. There are, and I think I will say for every, you encounter just a lot of shit. There's a lot of shit in the world, and there are jerks out there. There will be people trying to stand in your way, men and women, for whatever reason. But for so many of those people, I always find lots that are willing to kind of stand up and support you, or find a way to open doors, or find a way to make what you want to do possible. And I think that's something that hasn't always been true for women. I take that very, 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 thankfully I think I'm really blessed to have that and to be raised when I was raised, and to have those opportunities and to have people around me willing to stand up and help make that possible. And so, yeah, it's not an easy road. I don't think any road, the entrepreneurial road is not easy for anyone, man or woman, but I think that there's more and more people out there willing to stand up for you, and that if you can really, they're willing to believe in you. I feel like people believe in me today in a way I never would have been imagined possible, right? That I didn't see as an option as a center. So that's been just such a fantastic part and a big gift I've been given as a result of, SomaDetect.
So, so coming out of like a different generation, right? I don't really remember thinking that there were barriers. I just knew what I wanted to do, and one way or the other, I was going to get there. I was just very focused on it. And I think one of the gifts that teachers and educators give you is they make, so what really marks a good leader? It's not that, you're inspired by them. They make you believe in you. And when I think about the people that I met along the way, the teachers who worked with me, the other leaders in this community, that was the big difference. There was this incident that happened at Roswell Park where Candace Johnson just said, no, she's right, and you're not, Mr. Chairman. And it was a big deal. And when I won this big prize from the American Association for Cancer Research, I don't know who was prouder, Candace or myself. So it was a wonderful moment. But sometimes you need people like that who step in and help you.
Yeah, and I think as women we need that more than anything, because we're lacking self-confidence. We don't want to boast of ourselves. We don't try. We don't want attention necessarily all the time. So
men in power, right?
So we touched on a little bit. You mentioned Marnie, who's a great resource and has only been nothing but a leader kind of as we develop this ecosystem, and a good friend for you, North. So where else might you tell someone with an idea or just starting out to go in the Buffalo East?
And so Marnie obviously would be a first choice, because she was the one that called me.
Oh, right, okay.
Who said, why are you doing this? Why don't you turn it into a company? And I was like, okay, I can do that. And then I was like, I said, this isn't like running a science lab. She was like, no, you have to be able to, put together a business plan, and you have to do a pitch. I remember thinking, I don't know how to do that. But she found people who could help me do that, right? So today, UB has put a big push into building, infrastructure that really does support entrepreneurs. that man over there, Jack McCown, is someone else who, through the years, when you think about entrepreneurs in Buffalo, always giving up his time, helping people like think through things, supporting, you know, all the programs that we did at UB, and he doesn't have to do that. But it's people like Jack who step up to the plate, and you know, you think about just like we had the Bright event a couple of weeks ago, how that has evolved. And you know, that was something that Marnie really started and got the ball rolling. Having people that are willing to be mentors, giving up their time, giving beforehand, you know, there's no guarantee that anything's going to come back to you. You're doing it because you believe in what's happening here. So, you know, as 43 North has progressed across the years, you see the companies get better and better every year. Having a woman winner was the best thing. I loved it. And, you know, hopefully, I think there'll come a day when you think about, like, you know, they talk about women in STEM. And I said it would be really nice so that you don't have to say women in STEM, where we all are looked at equally, where pay rates are the same, where there's, you know, in the boardroom, there are just as many women as men. You know, there's no reason why I can't be like that. So my hope is by the time I leave this world, that there will be more equality in that regard. And women like us are the people who have to fight for it, so that that Buffalo Public School student has a chance.
You know, we moved here in January, literally drove from Fredericton, New Brunswick to Buffalo over, like, had Christmas at home, and then my husband and I, like, jumped in a car with cats who made cars, and drove for 2 days. Like, it was totally wild. And so many people come when you first arrive and they're like, oh, I do this and I can help you, or I do this and I, you know, but you can't take them all up on the offer. You can't have coffee with anyone. But I find so many of them will come back, you know, at the next quarter, or they'll come back later and say, just so you know, I really meant it. I really meant that if you need my help, I'm there for you. And that is, there's something just so incredibly lovely about that. What a darling thing about this city.
Yeah, priceless. So just on that note, the kind of the opposite approach is what do you both think we're missing in our entrepreneurial ecosystem? If there was one or two things that you think we certainly need to continue to develop, what might that be?
Well, I think one of the things that it's so hard for when you're an entrepreneur just starting out is that, you know, you can, number one, do it all. But it's people, it's the management teams, and actually tapping into someone else's experience. Like I was saying earlier, I was a scientist in a lab. I had no clue how to, you know, set up a company, run a company. And I think, you know, learning from someone who's been there and done that. Now, when I started my company, there weren't that many people out here in Buffalo who could really assist us, right? There just wasn't like that. So Marnie basically went out and, as I called it, blind dating for a CEO. But now, there are a lot of people in Buffalo who look at what 43 North is doing, who look at the life that it's breathing into the city, and they tap into their networks and help us build these teams here in Buffalo. And I think every year we get better at what we're doing. And you know, we're still not complete, we're not perfect, but I think every graduating class gets better and better and better. And we want you to stay here. I mean, people often say to me, why are you still living there? I'm like, well, why would I want to live anywhere else? Think about it. I was a little girl, the daughter of a police officer who, you know, he grew up in Black Rock. And here I am, running the Center for the University. I have my own company. I won one of the biggest awards in science in cancer research. And who would have believed it, Colleen, right? So, you know, like when I meet with these kids, I say to them, you know, I'm here talking to you today, but someday one of you is going to be standing here talking to the next generation. It's a city where you really can go from that to this. And as I said, Colleen, what you did with those kids, what you continue to do with them, bringing them here, making them realize that they can be the next Bethany, right?
So, to Norma's point, I moved home from Santa Monica, California. So, you know, we were a high of 74, 78, no humidity all year. And I had a pretty decent job at DreamWorks Animation. So if you can imagine the comments I got when I said I'm moving home, I'm gonna resign from DreamWorks, I'm gonna move to Buffalo, New York, I'm gonna not have health insurance, and I'm gonna move in with my parents. the questions were extensive as I drove home to Buffalo. So I get it, but I certainly, and now it's funny because now I love Buffalo, and I don't want to call anywhere else home, but I'm very I plan everything, but I make sure I get out of here. You know, I get to New York once a quarter, I ski out west, I go to the sun, because that's then what makes Buffalo possible. But now when I see my friends in these other places, they're like, they can't believe what I get to do here, right? Because you're not just another person at a big organization making a movie, or you can make an identity for yourself here through the help of our community. And what my friends have really come to see is how feasible that is between my brother before I was even here and now that I'm here. It's just, Buffalo has such opportunity, right, for the self. But if you take it up.
But think about the change that's occurred since, you know, if you would have looked at this campus around 2000, I mean, Jack, you remember what was here? You know, we had Roswell Park, they had just opened their new cancer center, but even going back 5 years with the old hospital, right? It was a much different landscape. The waterfront, Larkinville, none of that was here. Well, we had the waterfront, but it was not anything that you'd want to go and visit.
You went to Canada.
I went to Canada, that's right. So I think all of this, you know, I really do think that, you know, the university put its footprint downtown in collaboration with the business leaders, with the leaders at Roswell Park, with the leaders at HWI. You have a hospital system here, Tom Beecher and the BNMC. It took all of these folks working together to make a change in the city. And I often say, you know, success only happens and greatness only happens when you work together and you're not thinking about the me, but it's the we. And how do we really drive change? That's when greatness really comes out. And I look at the city and I think, you know, we're doing something right.
Should we end there? I'm so upset. I don't even remember my question. Oh, what are we lacking? Is that what?
I don't actually have anything to say for
Not cows. We're not lacking cows.
Not lacking in cows, not lacking in farmers.
It's very often. So last night, for example, I took some of the winners out for a paint night, and Bethany had signed up and paid. So I just texted her to make sure she was finding the Ellicott Square building okay, or to make sure everything was all right. And she said, "Oh God, I've just gotten home from a farm. I smell like manure. I'm in my boots. I can't make it." But that is more common of a response now than anything from her. So.
Lots of days on farm.
Yes. Okay. So I think I loved how you just wrapped that up, and that we need to not think about me. We need to think about we. Myself, I'm taking that. I've kind of treated this year as a year of trying to get my brain to constantly think about who else could I be involving in this project to make it that much better. So for 43 North, for my personal work outside of here, and if we just all kind of started doing that a little bit more, even in the smallest of decisions, who else should be at this dinner table, right? What other groups should we have extended advice to tonight? I think, well, you just never know, right? And so to your point earlier, this is how I'll conclude. Anyone that I met, like kids that I mentor or people that come through here and ask for help, I just say show up. Because you never know, and most of our events in this ecosystem are free or can be if you ask for help. You just never know who you're gonna run into. Right, and that's the whole purpose of why we're in this building with DIG, right? We talk about the collisions that happen just on the way, I mean, the bathrooms, it's a pain in the ass because it's all the way down there. But I can't tell you the number of things that have come out of that awkward hallway and running into people and being forced to talk to someone or telling someone a compliment that then you meet a new person who also is into cows. So thank you for showing up tonight. I was driving here from a doctor's appointment. I'm like, oh God, is anyone going to show up? It's the most beautiful night of the year thus far. But look, we have a full room. And I think this is a true sign of the evolution of our ecosystem and kind of the interest of Buffalo as a whole. So thank you. Thank you to my brother for letting me, he certainly got all the entertainment genes, so I hope I passed the test tonight. But I think we'll take a few questions if anyone has any.
I have to say it just kind of happens naturally. So, you know, as my boys grew up, all right, and you begin to realize that, you know, you had done a decent job raising them, that they could take care of themselves. You know, you just find time for things that really make your heart beat faster. And I often would reflect back on the opportunities that were given to me and wanting to make those opportunities for, you know, available for other children in the city. One of the things that you find is, you know, someone once said to me, and my boys often think about, you know, well, their dad passed away when he was only 38 years old, and they were just, you know, 5 and 6 years old. So they often think about life as if I only live to be 38, what do I want where do I want to be? What do I want to give back to the world? And my words to them are, if you're out there and you're leading a life where you always take the time to help someone else, where you fill your life with kindness and you share yourself with other people, no matter how short your life, if you only live to be 38 years, you live to be 100 years, you will have a great life. It'll be a life well lived. And I think, as I march through like all these, I love the work that I do because there's the possibility that it will, change someone's life, right? But it also meant that you can change someone's life through the tests that you develop, or you can change someone's life through just spending time with them and sharing with them what you do and why you care about them as a human being. They don't have to understand the wacky science that I do, but just saying, like kids today in Buffalo Public Schools, literacy is a huge problem. So they graduate, high school, are they going to be able to go into UB? It's a big challenge for a lot of these kids. Reading and math. So how do you level that playing field for them? And a lot of it means finding paths that help them catch up and make them understand why that education is such a huge gift. Because it gives them, a BCAT. What are we driving? Breaking the cycle of poverty. And it's a wonderful organization. And if you have time, I would really encourage you to visit. We have a new executive director. It's a place of hope and magic for these kids.
Sorry, quick question for any of you. I read a lot and I hear about really this war on talent, and I'm curious, as an entrepreneur, what talent gaps do you see that you don't see fulfilled as you guys are exploring and trying to achieve your entrepreneurial goals?
I have one of the best teams I ever could have hoped to have. I have people that, I feel came out of places I didn't expect and stood up and said they were willing to help me. And I think that, you can always, you always wish for more people, but I think that the folks that we have on our team are just so fantastic, and I never have felt that we're not able to find what we need to grow. I think that the people you need are out there, and I think sometimes you just have to let them come to you as well. I think that there's, things take time, finding the right people, and sometimes just for yourself, recognizing that they're the right people. Give yourself that time. I've just felt enormously blessed by the people that have agreed to work with me and support me throughout this, and have nothing but praise.
Sometimes it is hard to find the right talent for the companies like my own. So we do use recruiters, and we go outside, and it's amazing how people will say, Buffalo, the weather, the this, the that. They get here, and then they don't want to leave. So, I think part of it is just, you have to look at, maybe the talent isn't here at the moment in certain areas, but then go out and find it. And those then become Buffalonians for life. They don't leave.
Our current chairman is Eric Reich, and he runs Campus Labs, and majority of his talent is coming from outside of Western New York. But he knows what his employees need, he knows where they're coming from, so he makes the offers, that environment, the package, the pay, suitable for them. And they come, and more often than not, I know he'd say they don't go, right? So it's thinking about where they're coming from, what their expectations are, what their lifestyle is like, to attract what you need.
Hi. Yeah, I have a question about how you bring the kind of masculine and feminine qualities into your daily life as an entrepreneur, or as the work that you're doing, the research and everything. I'm listening to a conversation about that and how the feminine is so magical and the masculine is so necessary, and like how to bring that in so we're not so driven that it's just burnout city, but we're not so feminine that it's just, we're just hanging out and having a good time. How do you bridge that gap in your daily lives with work and family?
That's an incredible question, and not an easy one to answer. I grew up with 3 brothers, and I'm the only girl, I was the only girl in my family, and so I was always really comfortable not only being one of the guys, but also taking, like, I love that I'm the only girl. You know, I loved that I had that unique thing amongst my 4 siblings anytime I wanted it. And so, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that we all have feminine and masculine sides, and I think that being able to recognize them. So I think a lot actually about times, first of all, what I identify within me as feminine and what I say and what I do that is really feminine, but also times when I'm more masculine. You know, like sometimes you need to pick up the phone and yell at someone and be incredibly bullish and just have that power. And then I also, the other thing I'll say here is I think I have a lot of folks that I can turn to ask feedback from. You know, how did that meeting go? What did you think of when I said this? How did you feel? And so for me, a big thing I had to overcome was not defaulting to cute, which I see a lot of young women do a lot. It's easy to be cute. Like, hey, I can have fun, and it's nice to do that sometimes, but you need to be able to also find that power. That was actually a question I kind of have for you, Norma, is, was there a moment when you realized, sorry, I'm hijacking your question, but was there a time when you felt that, like, your power as a woman and as a leader come in, or was that something you felt you always had, and did you how did you navigate that as well? Maybe you can tell us about that.
So here's something that I remember, and one of my biggest regrets was when I had my 2 boys, I worked for men, and I was basically told, if you want to make it in this place, then you have to do what the men in the lab do. So my husband really spent most of his time with the boys when they were little. And when we found out that he had cancer, they were only, Carrie was 2 and Colin was 3, they were little. All I can remember thinking is, how could God do this? How could you leave them with me? How could this happen to our family? But you have to, I think work-life balance is so important, and you have to basically say to yourself, in a family situation, both parents have to pull equal weight. And Tom, but he more than pulled his weight. And maybe in some strange way that was part of karma out there in the world because he didn't get the time to watch them grow up. But I should have spent more time with them. But I was so focused on this career that I was building, and I knew that if I didn't do it, there wasn't going to be a career. What happened though is, after he passed away, there were people who then helped me. And, I found that path. And even now when I look at young women who are in the lab working hard and when they want to have children, I'm just like, you spend as much time with those children as you need to. Everything else will get done. Don't worry about it. Come back whenever you want to. The job is, life will go on, and we will continue the work with you. And I think sometimes, if men had to have babies, all of you should have to go through that process and just live it for the 9 months, and then the aftermath and the breastfeeding, and oh my God, that was so, and no one understood, no one cared back then. I think the world's getting better about that. But I think, even as a woman, I think about, I just figured I, in some ways, had to be like the guys in the lab. But that's really wasn't the answer. The answer was to really push back on it. And that's what I began to do, because I thought when I was left with those 2 little boys, if I didn't push back, then I would have lost them very early on. And, I think that's your instinct comes into play. You're going to fight for your family and your children. And you learn at the end of the day that, yes, your careers are important, companies are important, but your children, they are your legacy.
Yeah.
And you have to do it. And when you're growing a successful company, I think in many ways, the parenting skills that you have will take you a long way.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes.
This is more of a comment. I think I really connected with what you were saying about masculine and feminine,
And I think about, my first role out of my undergrad was, I was working in the marketing department for a manufacturer, and I was taught by our upper leadership that you have to be tough, you have to be, just flex your muscles all the time, right? And until I really got good leadership to teach me, these soft skills are as important as your, tenacity, or I guess for lack of a better term, that, though I've learned that those are even so much more important. And I connected with you about saying having children, and it's having empathy and having an understanding and really striving to communicate and view every person as a person, and everyone has their own deal, I guess. And just really trying to view everybody's perspective and getting as much perspective as possible. It's just a vast difference from when I started my career to where I'm at now, in having the right leadership to kind of coach me into understanding, don't be this tough guy all the time. You're a human being, and everyone you're interacting with human beings. So I just really kind of.
I really want to say also, thank you for that comment. I think we live in this funny world where the conversations that women have with women are incredibly different than the conversations that men have with men and that women have with men. And it wasn't until my brothers and I, my brothers and I, we always talk like siblings. We're pretty close. I tell them we're probably too much, but tell them everything. And that was just a really normal thing in my family. And my brother, one of my brothers, but the one just younger than me, when he was 24, made friends with a guy and said, we have real conversations. It's like talking to a family member. And I've never talked to someone like that before. But then, for me as a girl, I had been having these conversations, intimate conversations about how you feel and what you think, and what makes you angry and what makes you really happy and what love is, and having those conversations with your girlfriends. And even when Nick and I moved to Fredericton, this happened within a month. So I had been approached by a bunch of women who said, don't go down this road, don't go down that road, this is unsafe, there's the rates of, whatever are very high, you have to be careful. And so these are conversations that as women we have together all the time. Here's where safety is and here's where safety is not. And Nick said to me at one point, this is the safest place I've ever lived in my life. And I was just like, I'm terrified of this road and that road and this road. And it's such a funny thing. And I think that one thing we can all do, and I try to do this with great awkwardness, but nonetheless, is just have those conversations that you have with your girlfriends, with the men in your life, and for men to realize that there is a whole world of conversation out there that you are totally excluded from, and you need to be aware of that. That should bother you. It bothers me, and it bothered my brothers. And I think part of that is developing intimacy between two people that I think women do really well, and we need to be doing that with all of us.